Mm. Okay, guys, so welcome everyone. We are meeting again. Those meetings are organized by the Weekly Fasting Group, which is a big international community dedicated to fasting. And as the common denominator of the members of this group is that we try to abstain from food for at least 24 hours a week, 24 hours every week. Yeah, so 1 day a week as a group. And beyond that, it's a really open group. We don't have any particular agenda. We are into healing, different natural modalities. We have people from virtually all over the world. And every Friday, we try to bring an interesting speakers in the fields of spirituality, healing, nutrition, and lifestyle, other things. So if you are watching this video later on, and if those ideas appeal to you, then you will find my WhatsApp number below this video. My name is Arik. I moderate this group. You are welcome to send me a WhatsApp message with your name, and I'll happily add you to the group. So that's about the framework. Now, Alba, over to you. Please present our guest.
Thank you so much, Arik. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Today, we're going to be talking to Jordan the Frugivore about fruit, dining our way to divinity. I'm so looking forward to it. And we'll just take a moment to anchor into this space and just do a little brief meditation so we can be fully present and open and available for whatever's here for us today. And afterwards, Jordan, I'll turn it over to you where you can just catch us up for about 25 minutes or so about who you are, what led you to this path, what you're doing, and then we'll take questions from the group. I've got a few that they sent in advance, but then if people want to come off and either ask in the chat or mute themselves, or ask you one-on-one, we'll take those as well, okay?
Okay.
All right, everyone. So if you will just mute yourselves and get comfortable, whether you're sitting or you're lying, and gently close your eyes. And if it feels right for you, I invite you to place your left hand on your belly. Your right hand on your belly and your left hand in the center of your chest, in our sacral and our heart chakras. And let's just take some collective deep breaths at your own pace, dropping from the head into the body. Allowing our breath to anchor us in this time and in this space. Leaving behind whatever came before this moment and whatever will come after our time together. Trusting that all that we have to do will get done. Tapping into gratitude for our time together. Gratitude for Arik and this beautiful group. Gratitude for our guest who's going to share his experience and his beautiful gifts. Gratitude for life, exactly as it is. Gratitude for our amazing bodies that have taken such great care of us. Gratitude for being more in tune with our bodies and how it's always communicating to us and telling us how to support it optimally. Gratitude for ourselves and our commitments to being the best individuals we can be. Gratitude to life for supporting us through this incredible thing called breath. This beautiful, beautiful example that we are always supported, that we always have exactly what we need, whether the mind agrees or not. Gratitude for our beautiful minds, that no matter what our background, that through the mind and through the body, whatever has happened to us, we're so free and so powerful that we can mind those events and see that those things happened for us, for our own evolution, as well as a way of connecting with others and sharing our experience, strength, and hope. Let's take one last deep collective breath, breathing in, holding it at the top if you can for a second or two. And how about a deep exhale? Thank you all so much. Gently and slowly open your eyes with your gaze soft and low to high so as not to jar our nervous systems. Thank you, Jordan. I'm going to turn our time over to you. Welcome, welcome. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste. Thank you so much for that beautiful, warming and welcoming introduction and guided meditation. That's what it's all about. So yeah, I guess now is my opportunity to just briefly introduce myself. My name is Jordan Hunter. I go by Jordan the Frugivore on social media and the internet. So my story all begins 29 years ago in Jackson, Mississippi, United States. Can everyone hear me well? Awesome. So, I was born there. My parents were in, late high school, and they were dancers and musicians. And so, we were in what I would call the belly of the beast, not necessarily New York City, but Jackson, Mississippi being the capital of a very Southern, conservative, kind of racist, kind of disenfranchised, politically corrupt kind of area of the United States. And so I actually grew up, mostly with my mom. My parents, were separated most of my life. And so there was a little bit of, instability here and there, food scarcity or food insecurity, rather, the whole food desert thing. Now, I do recall growing up and when I was young, my parents would make a lot of foods fresh, at least once or twice a week. My grandma would come over and everyone would clean the collard greens and peel all the potatoes and, make all the cornbread. I was fortunate to grow up, without internet in the house and without, just so much technology and so much convenience and microwave stuff. So I do briefly remember, what being a human was like, before we were all interconnected too much and had too much screens and excess availability of stuff. But as I got older and as, the parents get busier, the kids get older, money gets tighter, food gets more expensive. So we began to, eat out a little bit more, a lot more, McDonald's, KFC, Popeyes, fried chicken, Pizza Hut, all that good stuff. And gradually the food stopped being prepared fresh. And it was more like, pre-boxed this and pre-packaged that, frozen this. So, fast forward to my upbringing in Mississippi, I eventually did go and move to Dallas, Texas to live with my dad for a few years. And that was a good experience where I got to experience a different part of the South. There's a lot more Latin American community. in Texas, and a lot more different flavors, different foods. And it was my first time being in a more multicultural environment, because in Jackson, Mississippi, it was quite similar to being in some part of Africa where like everyone's just African descendant, but we're in America. And so a lot of my peers were all, African descendants of slaves. And yeah, but when I moved to Texas, I began to have friends and colleagues from all over the world, Caucasian, Korean, Middle Eastern, you have it. So that was pretty cool. I got to experience, different cultures, like actually not just this monolithic kind of way of being, where in Mississippi, it's like, hey, go to church, say your prayers, go to school, get a job, and, don't do anything different. Don't listen to different kind of music. Don't wear different kinds of clothes. But when I moved to Texas, I was able to meet people of all different religions. I had a close friend whose mom was maybe like Korean. So we had this like multicultural, I got to experience all these cultures for the first time. Being a kid from Mississippi, you just don't even consider that there are other ways of being than how you are in your family's household. Eventually I moved back to Mississippi to finish high school. Mind you, I actually had my background mostly in music my entire life. So around 6th grade, I ended up joining the marching band because of reasons I told you, how my dad and my mom actually met because my dad was in the marching band and my mom was a dancer. I actually have my trumpet here. And so, yeah, so the musical thing was always a part of my genes. But once I got into 6th grade, started to play the trumpet, this opened up a whole world where I got to be more creative. I got to explore leadership. I got to explore learning, but teaching. I got to explore having sort of tradition and lineage passed down towards you. And it was beautiful. That's really where I got my base foundation in like meditation and spirituality. Before I even knew what that was, it's like, in order to actually learn to play an instrument like this, it's mostly about breathing and posture and visualization and calmness and stillness. So that kind of set a precedent for me to become a very like mindful, bodily conscious person throughout the rest of my life. So fast forward, I'm in high school, I get some scholarships, I go to university, I decide to move to Atlanta, Georgia. So now, my world expands a lot, and Atlanta is the first place where, okay, there's a large population of African Americans. However, there's so much diversity in where we come from and how we live, and different religious backgrounds, different spiritual practices. Really amazing part of the story I always forget to mention, but my freshman year roommate at Morehouse College was actually a guy from Burundi, East Africa. And so you got me coming from Mississippi to Atlanta, him coming from Burundi, straight off the boat, as they would call it. And we get, shoved into this room where we're like living together for a year. And man, there was so much cross-cultural integration and cultural shock. And yet it was really my first introduction to indigenous culture, to be honest. This guy would like wake up each day and like wash his feet in the sink and just small things. It's like, wow, that's weird, man. You can't do that here. And they bring all these weird foods. But all that to say, this was my first time actually meeting like an African person, like someone who looked like me, but was from a completely different part of the world, different language, different culture, whatever. So that was like my first experience of actually traveling internationally without leaving the country, because Africa came to live with me. And so, yeah, I'm in college, I'm studying business and marketing. I'm in the band, I'm playing music, and I go through my entire 4 years of bachelor program. And I get to my senior year, and, because of how life turns and circumstances, I was pretty housing unstable at the moment, which is a whole nother conversation about how college students like homelessness and housing insecurity for people who live out of state and all that stuff. But yeah, so I was in between homes and I ended up staying with a friend. And while I was staying with this friend, I came across a book called about veganism. It was called Vegan, the New Ethics of Eating. And one of the authors was actually Dr. Michael Greger, and there were some other authors that had contributed to the research. And when I opened this book, the first inside the cover, someone had written the year, I think 1999 and vegetarian. And then they wrote like 2000 and vegan. And so I was like, wow. So I knew nothing about veganism other than I had heard of it maybe a year or so beforehand. I went to a vegan Sunday dinner, and all I knew was that the food didn't have any animal products in it, but I didn't know anything about veganism. Like I didn't know. I thought the only reason that people were vegans and vegetarians were because of like a religious obligation or some sort of health obligation where they can't eat meat. I never considered that there were people who actually chose out of their own volition to just not eat animals, and they like prefer to live that way. So veganism and coming across this book was like my first time realizing like, oh, this is a way of life. Maybe this book will actually tell me something about why people choose this way of life. So I opened the book. It has this little, the memory thing in there. And then I realized it's highlighted all throughout the book. There's like highlights. So like, wow, this is really great. I'm just going to read the highlighted parts because obviously this person came across information that made them make these lifestyle changes. So I'm skimming through the book. After a day or so, I'm like, whoa, this is a lot of information about like heart disease and, animal protein, being leading causes of death and cancer, stroke, heart disease, and then the environmental implications and factory farming, animal agriculture, water contamination, land usage, and then the whole ethical arguments and spiritual conversations around eating death and eating violence and eating the dead bodies of living beings. That was my first time ever coming across those types of conversations and that language and those ideas. And it kind of made me feel really like scammed because I was a senior in four-year university who had studied business and history, and it's a liberal arts school. So we're studying history and African history and art and music and culture and oppression and liberation. And here I am. I never thought about the fact that animals were completely part of this like genocide, and that I myself, even though I can claim, I'm a victim of maybe racism or, some other form of discrimination or oppression, I never considered ways in which I might be an oppressor to someone else's life. And it's like, dang, how can I ask white people to be kind to me, or, how can I ask them to actively be against racism when, okay, now I'm an oppressor in someone else's, story. What am I going to do about the fact that, I'm stepping on someone's toes and I have privilege? So it was kind of a thing of like, okay, let me not be a hypocrite. But basically, I'm kind of mixing up my story, but basically, that book was my first time hearing all this information. And so I was kind of indignant, like, wait, there's no way. How can this one book is giving me new information that I have not come across in any of my studies or books or conversations. I got to go do more research on this because I'm not like super gullible. I'm not just going to believe one book and change my life and change my religion and all that. So that took me to the internet, where I did YouTube, came across a couple of videos, documentaries, podcasts, whatever. Came across Gary Yourofsky's video as like the most important speech that you'll ever hear, where he gave a talk at Georgia Tech, maybe like 15 years ago. And that was a really powerful talk with like 1 minute of animal violence, animal slaughter footage, which was very, emotional for me. And a couple of other YouTube videos. And basically over the course of like 3 or 4 days, and this was around December 26th, 27th of 2015. So basically, New Year's Eve, I go to work, I'm working security as a part-time job, and I'm working at this concert that's happening over the New Year's Eve. And as soon as the 12 o'clock, streamers fall, the bells and whistles blow, woohoo, Happy New Year. I'm just thinking to myself, I don't want to make a New Year's resolution. I've been doing that every year for my entire life, and nothing ever changes, nothing ever sticks. Everyone makes a New Year's resolution, and it's just kind of a cliche, and nothing happens. But this is a new year. This is a new opportunity to, just recreate myself from here on out, and improve my life and be a better person. So I was just thinking, like, what's a way that I can be a better person starting now? And then because I had just been researching veganism for the past 3 or 4 days, and I'd learned so much, I was like, I want to say that I haven't eaten animals since last year. And just right then and there in that moment, you know, without eating a meal or making any tangible changes in my life, it was a mental, conscious, spiritual, heartfelt decision that, okay, the next time I eat food, there won't be any animals on the plate because that's violent, that's unnecessary, that's unhealthy. I basically know too much in order to even, I don't consider animals as food anymore. It was just like a mental shift for me. And I understand not everyone has that same kind of relationship with information or with empathy, but for me, it just made sense. Especially because I didn't grow up on a farm killing pigs and all that stuff. But yeah, so I went vegan. Very shortly after, you know, I started to realize like, wait, I'm the only African American person that I know that is doing this plant-based diet. And, you know, vegans are so awesome. Like we have great energy and everyone's so kind and bubbly and like healthy, but where are the Black people? um, and not to say that there weren't Black vegans, but just in terms of the mainstream movement in 2016, it wasn't quite a household conversation. You know, most people never heard of the word vegan, you know, in terms of the community. I was in an
I can
HBC.
totally relate. I can totally
Yeah,
relate.
it's just like, what is that? You know, some new religion. So that led me on a wild goose chase, and I ended up going to like Facebook and found some Facebook groups with Atlanta vegans and all of this stuff. And eventually, I found a group called "I'm Vegan and I'm Black. It Actually Happens." Yes, and that was the name of the group. So I was like, wow, even other Black vegans realize that it's hard to connect with other vegans that are melanated. And so while I was in that group, I came across a guy that was talking about his fruitarian diet, and his name is Orville Douglas. I definitely recommend you guys maybe get him on the podcast interview one day,
Okay, I will.
because he is just such a gem to us humans. But yeah, at the time, you know, he was talking about fruitarianism, and I was like, "What's that?" You know, this is like maybe a week after I went vegan, and so I DM'd him, asked him a few questions, and he was like, "Yeah, I only eat fruit. It's been like 4 years." And I was like, "How'd you get into that?" And he was just talking about his natural progression from being vegan maybe 17 years ago to going into raw foods, and then eventually just intuitively gravitating towards eating only fruits. And you know, he was big into fitness and nutrition, so that's kind of how he found out about plant-based diets, was through his trying to become healthy and fit and stuff. So long story short, I message him and I ask, can we meet up? He invites me to a raw vegan restaurant in Atlanta. Like, talk about serendipity and synchronicity. This brother was actually a resident of New York City at the time, or he lives in New York City. And I was in Atlanta. But when I messaged him that particular week, he was in Atlanta on
Wow.
vacation for his birthday, which we have our birthdays in the same week. And yeah, he was like maybe 52 or 53 years old at the time. And yeah, he invites me to this Tassili's raw vegan restaurant. And I Google it, I put it into Google and realized it's like a 15-minute walk from the college campus that I've been attending for 4 years. And I'd never heard of veganism. I'd never heard of raw vegan. Didn't even think that Black people were vegan. And here is a raw vegan African, you know, comedic arts-based restaurant in the West End of Atlanta. And so yeah, I went for a walk, met up with him, and then, you know, I'm just like, and he's just like so light on his feet, and his energy is just, you know, like it's just a different vibe, and I had never really experienced before. That day, I was super inspired that, like, one day I'm going to be a fruitarian, because that guy's getting results that I've never seen any other. I just really didn't know many chronic pain or take medication or you know, have some sort of like limp or just kind of like losing their memory needs after they get over a certain age, especially in, you know, all these. But before veganism, I was basically predisposed to
Your connection's a little
catching
wonky,
heart
Jordan.
disease and diabetes. Oh, sorry.
You're kind of coming and going, but right now you're good. Oh, you're frozen again.
Okay, let me turn the camera off and come back.
Uh-oh, did we lose him? I think we might have lost him for a minute. Let's just give him a beautiful moment to come back. Well, it says he's here. There he is.
Okay, sorry about that technical difficulty.
That's okay. No problem.
You all hear me?
Happy to have you back. Yep, I can hear you. There you go.
Awesome.
Yep, we can hear you. Yep.
Oh, that's cool. So yeah, I'm finishing up the story basically about my intro to fruitarianism. Yeah, met up with him. I basically was inspired, like, yo, I thought that I was predisposed to get diseases because I was African American, now realizing, okay, it's connected to our food and like how we live and stuff like that. So experiencing this was really inspiring. I continued following him for some months, and eventually I realized he was hosting these fruit feast challenges on Facebook.
Yep.
And I did that, and I made it about 21 days until I just kind of like got, I don't know, it was just like, okay, I felt like I accomplished the thing. I was like, I want to eat some more vegan food now because I'm still like on the honeymoon phase with even the vegan diet and all the plant-based versions of things that I was familiar with. So like plant-based burgers. And I was also at the same time discovering international cuisine because once again, I'm from Mississippi. We don't eat we don't eat a wide variety of foods. And so I was discovering Indian food and Thai food and Jamaican food. So it's kind of like, yeah, fruit's great. I felt great on this fruit thing, but like pad Thai and like Indian curry and like Jamaican patties and stuff. So that's why I hopped off the fruit feast. And then, it was my first year as a vegan. We had Thanksgiving coming up, and I ended up going to like a vegan Thanksgiving potluck. Christmas came up. I went to a vegan Christmas thing. And then I, kind of realized like, okay, this is kind of lame. I feel kind of icky. And I saw his posts online and I was like, I see the fruits. I see the challenge that he's hosting again. And seeing those fruit posts, it made me feel like I missed the way that I felt on fruits. And so I was like, okay, I'm going back to the fruit diet, fruit challenge. But this time, instead of going like cold turkey overnight from my fried vegan food to fruit, I had a little bit more wisdom at the time. And also I had finished university. So I was then working at a corporate, I was working at Salesforce in Atlanta. They had like a nice gym at the office. I had a gym in the apartment complex that I moved to. And so I was able to basically incorporate working out consistently. And the office had lots of fruit. And I basically was eating, I found Freely the Banana Girl, and I was kind of doing like raw till 4. Because that's just what naturally made sense. I was already eating so much fruits, but also wanting to eat some cooked foods. And I was like, let me just eat the vegan junk food one time at night, go to sleep, and boom. But probably like 2 weeks into that raw till 4 thing, I remember just sitting there one night, like after eating some takeout that I had ordered, and I was just kind of like, I feel heavy, I feel dead. And I realized like, okay, the cooked food's not where it's at. So I kind of was doing more so fruit until 4. And then for dinner, I would have like 90% raw food, like a salad with maybe just some cooked mushrooms or some cooked tempeh, just, some cooked ingredients on it. And that I was getting that satisfaction of like the drug-like effect of cooked foods, but I got to feel really good and vibrant from having like the salads and the smoothies and all of that. So this was me like organically finding my way. And by the time I started for this, that helped me transition and prepare for like a full-on fruit feast, because my body had like a couple of months of 80% fruit and eating, feeling light, feeling clean, and having less of the salt and the addictive foods were less part of my system. Yeah, so an important part of here is that before I did this second fruit feast challenge, I realized how isolating it was doing the first one. And it's like nobody, there's even now I'm even isolating myself from the vegans, like,
Right.
So I actually decided, okay, now that I've done this before, let me tell everybody I know, all of these people in Atlanta, all of these people at Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, Atlanta, Georgia State, all the people in the band, all of my musician friends, my modeling friends. Let me just tell people about this fruit diet and see who wants to join me. So I created a group in the app called Group Me, which is something we're using in university. And yeah, I like organically became this guide and this coach because people joined the group, they had questions, and we were just eating fruit together. And I also began to host these fruit lucks because I heard of the concept from I think Woodstock Fruit Festival and people like in New York City.
Yep.
First of all, shout out to the internet and like YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, because I was able to connect with all these people who were not in my physical reality,
Same.
but
Yeah.
they existed. And like the stuff that we were into was not so strange to them. So, came across Ted Carr and Woodstock, and I was like, oh, Fruit Lux, that's an awesome idea. We just bring fruit and eat it. So I started hosting these Fruit Lux in Piedmont Park in Atlanta. And that was cool. That was fun. But then I realized, okay, no one cares about fruit. So I started to, at the same time I was getting around into yoga. I got so much energy from eating the fruit diet. Like my energy levels skyrocketed, and I needed something to do with all the energy. So the universe actually brought this brother into my life, and he introduced me to acro yoga. He invited me to an acro jam. I had no idea what an acro jam was. But I go into this building, this room, and there's like padded cushions, and there's like humans climbing on each other and stretching and floating and hanging. And I was like, wow, that looks fun. How do you do that? And this guy's like, come on, let me show you. So that particular day, I actually did acro yoga for like maybe 3 hours or just until my body gave out, because it's like there's so many new muscles being activated that eventually I got very tired. And that created a new passion for me. That ignited a new passion for movement for me, because it's like yoga and all that stuff was very fun. But then I was like, this acro yoga thing, it's like partner, playtime, physics, gymnastics, meditation, mindfulness, like everything, communication, consent was coming in there, trust, surrender. And but then I was like, well, how do I get good at this acro yoga thing if I don't always have a partner? And so that made me see the value in like calisthenics and in body weight movement and functional training. So I basically started practicing yoga a lot. I bought a pair of gymnastics rings, and I started to do focus on having a movement practice. And to me, I know this talk is about fruit and dining to divinity, but there's so many people that learn about eating fruits that still have a lot of health issues, and they still end up having like self-confidence issues and beauty issues and weight issues and hormonal and depression issues. And the number one thing that I noticed within the raw vegan and fruitarian niche or community movement is that there's a lack of focus on physical exercise and movement, because we can go back and eat an ancestral, natural, frugivorous diet, or we can fast and do that stuff all day. But we still live in 2023, where we don't walk 40 kilometers per day. We literally wake up in a soft bed, and we go and, we sit to eat breakfast, and we sit, in our commute to work, and we sit at work and school, and then we go home, and then we sit on the commute, on the train, in the car, and then we sit and we come home, we kick our feet up, we sit, and then we sleep. And it's like, we're meant to use our bodies in so many other ways. So this is around the time I really became passionate about the word frugivore. When I found out about frugivores, I was like, oh, there's actually classifications of animals that are designed to eat fruits, the same way there's animals designed to eat meat, plants, and everything. So, okay, we're frugivores, but also that doesn't only mean the diet. Like there's a lifestyle that comes with being a carnivore, sleeping a lot, chasing your prey. There's a lifestyle that comes with being an herbivore, walking and foraging grass and eating leaves and eating on grass all day. And there's a lifestyle that comes with being a frugivore. And part of that is, moving, walking, running, climbing, picking your fruit, farming, gardening, going upside down, swinging, hanging, playing, because also eating fruit just makes you slightly more childlike, in my opinion. You become more playful, more lighthearted. you become less serious about all the stuff that's weighing people down. And so, to me, being a frugivore is about the way you eat, but also the way you live, the way you think, the way you move, the way you breathe. So yeah, stories all over the place, but that creating that coaching group, eventually I was basically doing the Fruit Feast Challenge, guiding other people. So I was gaining lots of experience through the experiences of other people, because also I was 22, 23 years old. I hadn't developed chronic illnesses yet. But there were some 50-year-olds, and some other 30-year-olds, and they had chronic issues, and these issues would like disappear when they would eat the fruit. And then people would ask me, what are some of the benefits of eating a fruit diet? And I would forget, like, because I'm like, I don't, and I would realize, like, oh, the benefits are actually all of these symptoms that I used to experience that were normal for me, such as like having a mucus, runny nose, or crust in your eyes when you wake up, or like huge amounts of earwax, or having a body odor, or having your poop that smells. I used to, not be very flexible, and I would get like cramps and Charlie horses when I was young if I would get in some sort of weird position for too long, or if I would run or do physical activity, just all these things. And I was a pretty healthy, like lean, slender, genetically sound guy. But then I realized, like, oh, the main benefit of fruitarianism is that I'm actually experiencing a whole new level of life without all of this friction and resistance from my body, without pain, like my sleep. Like, I sleep so clearly and so soundly. My favorite benefit that I remember first experiencing was like my first day that I ate only fruits. I remember the very next day, I woke up literally 1 minute before my alarm went off. And I just remember rolling over and looking at the alarm, say like 5:59, and I watch it turn to 6 o'clock. And I just realized, like, whoa, I've never woken up before my alarm. I always waking up to the alarm. And I also just hopped up out of bed. I was so light. I was just like, did I even sleep? Like, I just feel like I can go and like climb a mountain right now. And I'm so used to this kind of like, oh, I have to wake up. Like, give me 5, 10 more minutes. Snooze, snooze, snooze. So I just remember having that sort of serendipitous experience, like literally almost like a psychic experience, where I must have astral projected and saw that it was almost time to wake up. And it's like, oh, let me just wake up. It's like, I'm not tired anyways. After 24 hours of just eating fruit. And so I knew something was up. And, basically since then, my sleep requirements are obviously very, very low. I don't need 8 or 9 or 10 hours of sleep. Not every night. Maybe once every 4 months, if I'm really busy, I might sleep for 10 hours. But in general, yeah, I can just 4.5, 5.5 hours of sleep, and I'm like ready to go. And you can ask like any people that have ever spent time around me, anyone who's ever spent a week with me, they're like, wait a minute, Jordan, you're awake when I go to bed, and sometimes you're awake when I wake up. When do you sleep? So yeah, but yeah, the fruit diet, that fruit basically got me passionate about movement, coaching people. And very shortly after, I became more into minimalism, because basically I just kind of continued on this awakening, left my corporate job, ended up selling and giving away all of my possessions. Around this time, a friend of mine came back from Thailand, and he was like, Jordan, I just studied Thai massage and I want to give you a session. So I had no idea what Thai massage was. I was already, I think I'd already done my yoga teacher training at this point. Was deep into fruitarianism and acro yoga and fitness. And I never heard of Thai massage. So he comes, lays me out on the floor, starts stretching me out and twisting my body and my hips and my legs and my shoulders and my neck. And after this like hour session, I'm like, wow. That was amazing. Like, I need to, like, that's what I need. I need to learn how to do that for people, because I'm already teaching them yoga. I'm already helping them with fitness. But what I'm experiencing, the amount of flow of energy and chi through my body right now, like, people need this. And this is what I want to offer people. So he told me where he went to learn. And I basically Yeah, I was started just teaching yoga, working at a juice bar, and just in a couple of weeks, oh, I also moved into a tent. So I like got rid of my apartment and I started living in a tent in my friend's backyard. And my friends were actually these owners of a raw vegan restaurant in Atlanta. So it was pretty worked out pretty well where I could like go in and use the blender in the shower and then go back and just live in the backyard where there was a fig tree in the center of the garden. So it was like my little Garden of Eden. And yeah, basically after a couple of weeks, I just booked a one-way ticket to Thailand, and started to study Thai massage and other forms of indigenous ancestral healing, herbalism. And from there, I kind of just opened up a whole nother chapter of my life where I wasn't into this corporate business marketing, let me go about my future the way that they told me. Because at the same time, the world and the economy was changing. You know, it's more commonplace to be an entrepreneur and to have your own business and to be a coach or, so really being a yoga instructor was really my first introduction into like being an entrepreneur and having like an offering that I was like comfortable with selling to people because I didn't want to like sell cheeseburgers or sell corporate software. It's like my consciousness started to not align with that because it's like, okay, these things aren't contributing to a better planet. So yeah, but then I found veganism and fruitarianism and acro yoga and Thai massage. And I started to actually travel and offer these healing services at festivals in Guatemala, Costa Rica. And it really just allowed me, before then, the only thing that I had was like music and playing my trumpet, which had allowed me opportunities to travel to like Hawaii, for example, and just to experience basically a different quality of life that's not really accessible to a lot of people where I'm from. Like I said, from Mississippi, poor public education, all that stuff. But then you get these, and now, I'm wearing like tuxedos and I'm like visiting the White House and I'm like, playing at these galas and with celebrities and all that stuff. So that was music. But now this whole holistic path that I was choosing was introducing me to a world of people all around the world who are into basically alternative or holistic natural living. And it's just been a journey. That was maybe in 2018 that I took that first trip to Thailand. And there was also a few opportunities where I went on some retreats. I attended a retreat with Kemetic Yogi. It's like a nature nudist retreat, a nude nature yoga retreat. And that also kind of like really initiated me into the sacredness of nudity and nature. And it's just been a beautiful path. So thank you guys for listening. But that journey has basically taken me to, I've traveled all over. I went to Bali, Indonesia, Malaysia, went durian hunting. And a couple years ago, I found out about Ecuador. And so I took a trip to Ecuador, ended up teaching breath work and yoga at the Amazon Fruit Festival in Ecuador here. And the country, the life that I ended up being able to create, it's just been like none other. So I've spent maybe the last 6 years kind of traveling, and ever since I got a passport, I pretty much never stayed in the same city more than like a month or two. But Ecuador, I ended up staying for like 2 years, and meeting lots of friends, really getting my Spanish to like nearly a working level where I could basically get a job in Spanish if I wanted. And yeah, now I live on an organic farm in a geodesic dome here in these mountains of Ecuador. And I actually host some holistic retreats. So that's, way back then, like 5 years ago, when I first went on that first retreat, I knew after that experience that I was going to host retreats. I was like, this is such a transformational way to like just have people awaken in like a very quick, abrupt way. Because a lot of times it's the environment that restricts us from being able to grow and change in the way that we want to change. But if you can change your environment, maybe you can have some clarity to really just resonate with where you want to be and who you want to be. So it took some years of traveling and, finding my footing and my grounding. But when I got to Ecuador, I was like, wow, this place has what I need in order to feel comfortable creating holistic wellness, uh, amazing quality fruit, coconuts, sugarcane juice, fasting. You can do that. And this is the first place where I've literally you could just run into so many fruitarians and fasting people here. Maybe this group isn't too familiar, but there's this guy, his name is, I think, Matt Murdock. His name always came up around here, but he was really big in the raw food. I hope my connection's still good.
Yeah, we can hear you.
But he was really big in the raw food movement. He's a person that there's literally just like literally in the town where I live, there's like a dozen fruitarians, and there's a few people that are like over 60 years old that have been eating fruit and raw vegan. So it was really cool to like find another place where it's like normal to run into people that are like living a very, very alternative, holistic life. I think that's enough for like my super rich, condensed life story. I'm sure you guys have.
It was beautiful.
I think that's enough for people to have plenty of good questions for me to segue from.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking us all around the world with you. That was beautiful. And you actually drew a map for us from, most of our, whatever our original origins are and our original diets into fruit. And then you've defined divinity in a whole new way. Like it's not intellectual. What at least for me, I'm feeling this embodiment of how your life went, how you got lighter mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, like just in all the ways. And then it turned into, like you said, being a frugivore. Because I always wondered why your name was Jordan the Frugivore. I just assumed it was the fruit. But I loved what you said, because I actually took notes on it about it's not only the way of life, it's about movement, it's about planting, it's about growing our own. And then you created this beautiful community through experiences. And we can talk about your Telegram community later, but I will post all of his contact details I already have in the group. So thank you. I'm sure I wasn't the only one wondering why you were Jordan the Frugivore in all these years. And I found you thanks to the internet. And I found fruit through Orville. So thank you for sharing that part with us. I do have a few questions, and if anybody has any, you can put them in the chat or feel free to raise your hand. And after we answer these, we'll come to that. So really appreciate you. The first one is, what is the ideal fruit meal look like and or combination? And this person is asking like for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks.
Okay, that's a beautiful question.
Yeah.
Because we're taught such rules about food and all this stuff. But honestly, the ideal meal is a mono meal. It's one fruit, at least one fruit, just per meal. You could eat one fruit all day or all week. You can eat watermelon for 6 months if you want. But yeah, in terms of digestion and just in terms of getting the most benefits and, having the best digestion, having the best assimilation, the best elimination, it's ideal, and I would arguably say most enjoyable, to eat high quality, fresh, ripe, local fruit, one fruit type at a time. So my go-to, watermelon is amazing for breakfast. Like having a melon for breakfast is really good. The other one that usually comes up for me is like citrus juice. My number one meal over the past 7 years has been some form of oranges for breakfast. Now in my particular journey, it's progressed from, when I first began, I think I would just like eat the oranges for breakfast. And I think eventually I was like, I would blend the oranges, maybe with a bit of ice, and I would have like an orange slushy for breakfast. And now I just kind of like, I like juices for in the morning. I don't really crave solid foods. So I usually get my hydration from like a juiced version of the fruits in the morning. Or like I might take a watermelon, for example, split it in half, juice half of it, eat the other half, and just variety. Like I want to chew some, I want to drink some. It's sweeter here. It's, refreshing there. So that's the ideal meal. The next to ideal meal would be maybe no more than like 3 to 5 types of fruits put together in a fruit salad or a smoothie. But that can be pretty complex. There are some charts for like food combining, and there's sweet fruits, acidic fruits, subacidic fruits. It can get really complex, but the ideal, because that's what you asked about, is eating mono meals and focusing on that and keeping the meals simple if you do combine ingredients.
Perfect. Oh my gosh, that was going to kind of be my next one, is like best fruit combinations, worst fruit combinations. One, obviously our body tells us, right, when we make a bad combination, but any rules of thumb or anything like that on like how to know how to make the best combination so that we don't create a burden on the body?
Yeah, something I've noticed over the years. So there's like food combining during one meal, and then there's like the food combining throughout the day and like the order in which you eat foods. So I've noticed that it makes more sense to eat the most hydrating foods first, because they digest the quickest,
Mm-hmm.
and and you also might not need heavier food if you just hydrate. So you might think, oh, I actually need bread and beans and rice, but then you might eat like a couple of peaches or apples, and it's like, oh, I've now satisfied hunger and thirst, and now I don't need anything. Um, but yeah, rules of thumb, yeah, just eat the most hydrating foods first. And then if you're gonna eat anything like more dense in sweetness, like bananas or mame sapote, maybe eat those after the hydrating oranges and melons. And then, something I learned from Orville Douglas, which makes a lot of sense. It's like if you do include non-fruits in your diet and you eat something that's not sweet, juicy, hydrating fruit, if you eat something that's not that, like bread or beans or something, you don't want to eat any fruit after that. So it's kind of like once you break a fruit fast for the day, you don't really want to revert back to eating fruit in that same day, because you might create fermentation with how, like, let's say a pita bread, maybe you eat falafel or something. Maybe the pita bread from your lunch at 2 p.m. is not fully digested by the time you're trying to have mangoes and grapes and apples for dinner. So that can cause some people to have issues if their system is already compromised, which most of our systems are compromised. Now, to be honest, in a really healthy body, or someone who has healthy eating practices, you can honestly eat whatever you want, because ideally you wait for your food to digest before eating again. So ideally, one or two meals per day is ideal. You give it 24 hours to digest, and then you move on. And if you have really clean gut, strong gut, maybe you do breath work, maybe you do a lot of abdominal work. If you have that digestive fire, then you can handle some quote unquote improper food combinations. One of my favorites that I enjoy right now, which I wouldn't recommend for people, but because of where I live, there's lots of oranges on the land and there's lots of bananas on the land. Now, oranges are an acid fruit, and then the juice is even more acidic and it's more sugary if you remove the fiber. And then you have bananas, which are like the least hydrating of all water-rich fruits, because even bananas are like 70% water. But notice bananas don't drip. They don't drip any liquid when you eat them. So there's not that much water in them. And they wouldn't really be an ideal food combination for most people. I wouldn't recommend that. But myself, I blend bananas and orange juice almost every day and drink it, and it's tasty. So just listen to your body. But what was the original question?
That was good. No, you covered it. It was about kind of best and worst fruit combinations and how to figure that out. And I love that I constantly refer people back to their body too, right? Because it's the best teacher, it's the best coach. And so, yeah, thank you for that. Somebody asked,
Yeah.
what's the best? Okay, go ahead. Were you going to say
Oh,
something
just
else?
one last thing on that is that basically, yeah, like like if you're experiencing digestive issues at all,
Mm-hmm.
most people are like, oh, well, what should I eat? What should I do in order to fix my simplify, eliminate, remove? So like most likely you could even be eating the right foods, but you could be eating them in the wrong combination or two combined at the same time. Just stop eating and simplify the way you're eating. Do a water fast, do a dry fast, do a mono fruit fast, and you'll notice your digestion gets better. And then when you start to reincorporate foods, keep it simple. Add foods in one at a time, two at a time. Because a lot of times people will go from fasting or a mono diet, and then they'll go to eating cooked foods or something like that. And then they'll say, oh, I can't eat that because it makes me sick. And they actually don't know what makes them sick, because every time that they're not fasting, they're eating 20 ingredient meals. And it's like, you don't actually know whether it's you don't know whether it's the salt or it's the oil, or you don't know if the beans, or you don't know if garlic is acidic for you, or you don't really know. So be a scientist, make a 3-ingredient salad, make a cucumber, tomato, lime salad. Then tomorrow add lettuce to that and see how it digests differently, for example. Experiment.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. That was awesome. Someone asked, what is the best fruit to release weight?
So I don't really approach fruits from this whole like which benefit am I gonna get from, because for example, someone could be like, oh, grapes have all these anthocyanins and that's really good for you. But if grapes are out of season or you just don't like the way they taste, then you're not going to get the benefit of eating grapes. So it doesn't matter. The most ideal fruit for losing weight would be whatever fruit is so tasty that you don't eat other foods. Because if you eat a fruit diet, then you're going to release the waste that you need to release. But if your fruit is not high enough quality, or if you're not eating enough of it, then if you're not enjoying the diet, then you won't get the benefits of the diet. But so I wouldn't answer it in terms of which fruit is the way to lose weight, but more so, how do you lose weight on any diet? Right. So the question would be, are you eating only fruits? And if you are, if you're eating only fruits and you're not losing weight, then maybe you're really healthy. But most likely you're not eating only fruits. So I would actually recommend to just eat a fruit diet, and then you'll lose the weight that you're trying to lose. But if you're asking from a perspective of, I'm eating a fruit diet and it's hard to lose weight, well, then, the way to lose weight is to actually reduce your caloric intake. But I don't recommend trying to limit calories for people that are transitioning from a cooked diet to a fruit diet, because if you're eating 3,000 calories of cooked carbohydrates per day and you transition to a fruit diet, I've never met anyone who intuitively will eat 3,000 calories worth of fruit when they're coming from a cooked diet, because the whole composition of those foods are completely different. If you were to eat to your same satisfaction on a fruit diet, you probably end up eating half the calories if you're not including dates and bananas and avocados in your diet. Like, fruits are very low in calories, but big in volume and fiber and water. So basically eat as much sweet, juicy fruits as you want, and you'll actually probably lose weight. And if you're not losing weight, it's probably too many bananas or dried fruits, or maybe there's, I'm not saying that those are inherently bad, but depending on your goals, they're going to tax the body, and then the body might hold on to weight or water or inflammation because of how complex those foods are. So yeah, but short answer, melons. If you do a melon diet, I think they're just so hydrating and so cleansing for the body. Aside from coconut water, you can do a coconut water fast. But you can eat melons and you will continue to lose waste. You will continue to release what's not serving the body. So definitely try a melon diet or a citrus, any type of mono diet for sure.
Thank you. And also, going back to something you said with the last question, is keeping it simple too. Sometimes the body won't release because, like you said, it's just too complex, and so it's creating some other hiccup. All right, thank you. So then someone said, they've got a few questions here. What are your thoughts on B12?
Ooh, my thoughts on B12.
Have, we don't get enough B12. Maybe we need.
It's cool. Nobody knows, to be honest. B12 is one of those complex things, but B12 is one of those nutrients that I would put in the category of like kind of an environmental nutrient. It's not something that we would get from food. Animals make B12. So the B12 that meat eaters get, first of all, meat eaters get their B12 from the B12 supplements that's in the animal feed of farm-raised animals. So if you're not eating commercially grown animals, then you might consider taking a B12 supplement. But personally, I don't, like, philosophically, I don't really resonate with the concept of taking isolated supplements and nutrients, because that's not how the body was designed and that's not how nature works. There are some emergency cases where I'm imagining if your B12 is just so low and you're experiencing the symptoms, which take like 20 years to manifest, then take the supplement and then, you know, solve that problem. Because if you're not vegan, you're on B12 supplements anyway. You're not getting B12 from your environment. The problem is that our environment is too sterilized. So we're destroying bacteria in the soil and on surfaces and on our skin and in our intestines. So one of the most important things I'm recognizing is that bacterial, like colonial health, is pretty much the key to everything. Everything's microbes. So it's about having the right microbial balance in your gut, having the right microbial balance in your soil and foods and all that stuff. But I live on an organic farm. I pick my herbs and fruit fresh out of the garden. I don't even use detergents or chemical soaps at all in my life at all. In terms of washing my fruits and veggies, I just use water. If I don't trust the source, then I might do a bath in baking soda and vinegar of the produce. But overall, yeah, you actually just want to swim in natural water. I think do some gardening, get some nails and some dirt under your nails, and you know, see what happens. Do some blood work, which blood work really isn't the solution for B12, because you excrete like 95% of the B12 that you consume is found in your excrement. So we're actually meant to reabsorb the B12 that we create in our bodies through the bacterium that we're supposed to be getting in our gut. We create that in our small intestines, and we reabsorb, you know, the necessary 5%, you know, through our small intestines. I do believe if a person is on a cooked diet, that their gut microbiome might be compromised in such a way that they are not synthesizing B12 the way that it's supposed to be in nature. So you might want to supplement if you're eating a cooked vegan diet or predominantly cooked foods. But if you're focusing on, you know, eating a raw, fresh, living foods diet, you do the gut cleanses, but not too much gut cleansing, because you don't want antibiotics, you don't want to destroy the gut microflora. But if you're keeping the gut clean and nourishing it with healthy plant flora like salads and fruit fiber, you don't really have issues to worry about with B12. So short answer, eat a raw vegan diet, eat organic plants with a little bit of dirt on it. Don't worry about B12. Or if you have some cooked foods in your diet, or if you're concerned, do some testing, check your levels, do a supplement if you want. But yeah, you have to make your personal choice, honestly. We're not going to be able to, that's one of those answers that you will never be able to outsource the solution outside of yourself, because we have different genetic backgrounds, different environments, different predispositions. And like I said, between B12, vitamin D, and iodine, those things are actually to be created through your environment, and you're supposed to absorb that through interacting with your environment. Iodine from swimming in ocean water, B12 from swimming in streams. And, you know, every time you swim, you ingest a little bit of the water. Well, there's bacteria in that. You will create that. There's also some natural sources. I believe spirulina or chlorella, they have B12. But once again, I don't believe in the concept of how can it have B12 when that's a nutrient that is synthesized in my body by a bacterium that's supposed to be present. So
Perfect. Thank you. So, you know how like too in this movement, a lot of people say you have to live in the tropics. What are your thoughts about that? About being a frugivore or a raw vegan? Do you feel it's necessary to live in the tropics? Do you feel it's optimal? Or what about like living right where you are, you know?
I think it's a personal preference. For me, once I started to travel to the tropics and to consume the fruits that are from, you know, the rich soil in, you know, South America or Africa or Southeast Asia, and honestly having access to coconuts, and, you know, if you drink like 2 or 3 coconuts per day, you can practically skip a meal or two. It's like you can just not really eat. For me, I do prefer to live in the tropics. For the climate, you know, if you look at my skin, you can see my ancestry comes from a very warm, hot, tropical place on the planet. And so that feels really good for me. I do know people who are thriving. Orville Douglas, for example, almost 60 years old, eats a fully raw, pretty much fully fruit diet, lives in New York City, and you know, doesn't have any problems with that. But even he himself, I've been noticing him, and he's doing a lot more traveling lately. So he's always going further south, going to the sun.
Yeah, Florida,
so you know, in
right?
the U.S., you know, people, all the fruitarians are always in Florida, and you know, so
Yeah.
there's just this pull towards living closer to the sun. I also believe that for me, the tropics is important, but for me, it's more so about living in the matrix and living very close to um, densely populated cities. So I think there's a lot of pollution. I think there's a lot of weaponization of that environment. So I don't think it's ideal. But to be honest, I feel like if you live in a densely populated area, it's more imperative to actually be fruitarian.
Oh yeah.
Environment's so toxic that you actually need to be cleansing all the time. You know, you need to be putting these plants and these fruits inside of your body. You need to be eating the sunlight because half the year there's not enough sunlight. Whereas, for example, in the tropics, I mean, people can get away with eating all kinds of things because, like in Ghana, for example, it's just so hot. You're detoxing no matter what you eat. Mind you, organs still have to get taxed in order to process these things. But yeah, I mean, live wherever you want to live. But
Awesome.
I challenge you to do a personal experiment, and you go to the tropics and you eat your fruit-based diet, and you go back to America. The main issue is quality and cost. And basically, high quality fruit is more available, higher quality, more variety, more nutrient dense parts of the world. Than it is in like the US or in any densely populated city, like, you know. But once again, if you don't want to live in the tropics, I actually do recommend living in the rural parts of North America, Northern Europe, where you can focus on growing your food, and you can avoid a lot of the pollution and the contaminants that's happening. And if you live in the tropics, just because you're in the tropics doesn't make you completely safe. I don't recommend living in the capital city of any country, you know, because it's basically the U.S. capitalist beast in some way.
Gotcha. Someone asked about, what do you think about the biblical narrative? There seems to be like two schools. There's one that, you know, about being fruitarian, and then there's also one about, you know, eating beets. What, if anything, do you have any thoughts about that?
I'm sorry, what was the second school? Eating beans?
No, meat. There's
Animal.
one that's like, it seems like it's fruitarian, and then there's the other one that you can eat the beasts of the field.
Right, eating beans. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a religious expert, but it would appear if you look at the Christian Bible, there's nowhere in there where it mandates eating animals.
True.
There's all this context and all this of nuance around it. You know, I believe eating animals was introduced after the fall of man. Actually was introduced, well, we ate whatever we wanted after we fell, but it was permitted after the flood, and everything, all the vegetation was dead. So God was like, yeah, eat some animals because you got to survive. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear in the Bible, like that the Most High would have us to eat like we're in the Garden of Eden, you know? Now, once you get into us being less than perfect, then yes, our heavenly creator, parent, master, father, yeah, he don't want us to do the worst possible thing. So he gives us levels in which he's like, I mean, if you eat animals, cool, eat them, but like pigs, those are nasty. You know, it tells you which animals are the cleanest and the less clean, and there's kinder ways and all of this to do it. But that's kind of like, you know, you got some children that are like delinquents and they've been to prison, and like you can't tell them not to murder, but you can just, you know, just tell them, okay, if you're gonna rob people, only do it on a Tuesday. You know, it's like you're not condoning that they do any crimes, but you're just hoping that they don't commit the worst of them. So I feel like that's how God is with the Bible. He's like, look, y'all all sinners. So, you know, you're already sinning, but you'll be the worst of the worst. You'll be really dishonoring, you know, everything if you go and eat the dirtiest and dirtiest of the animals. And if you really, really care to honor and respect, you know, the Most High, then, you know, you'll focus on eating these cleaner animals and that honor your temple a little bit better. But there's all this context in the Bible about fasting and about the Daniel fast and about the Eden Genesis diet. And it's like, it seems that the Creator always shows favor to the most plantful, fruitful person in the room. I mean, let's go back to the very first.
So
Thou shalt not kill. Let's go back to the very first instance of murder in the Bible was basically linked to eating animals.
Yeah.
Cain and Abel. It's like, you know, the one that was sacrificing the animals to the guy, like, you know, he ended up being the evil spirit, you know.
Yeah.
So
well, thank you for exploring that
yeah.
with it. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, like I said, I'm not a religious guy. I'm not really a person that's looking for permission outside of myself to do what I think is right or wrong.
I love that. Right? Thank you. Yeah. All of our answers are inside. Thank you. What are your thoughts on germ theory of contagion and disease versus terrain model of health and disease?
Yeah, based off my research, like the terrain theory okay, so the germ theory doesn't have an explanation for non-infectious diseases, for example. The terrain theory explains infectious diseases and non-infectious diseases. It has, it just makes sense. And also I'm living an experience where it's like I'm not sick and I'm exposed to the contagions that they talk about. So what's the difference between you, me, and this person all experiencing the same germs but not getting sick? Terrain. It's just that simple.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So yeah, I think you gotta I think you gotta experiment, you know. I hope the people that have these questions are not experiment, try it out. Like you know, so their last part of this answer, there are some experiments where they try to give people the flu virus by like coughing and sneezing on them, and they couldn't force these people to get sick. Like, you know, it was literally based on the individual terrains of the individuals, but they couldn't replicate these viruses in labs, and they couldn't intentionally make you contagious. Like they couldn't give you someone's disease on purpose. And I like, this is my favorite way to think about it. You know, I can't give you my sickness the same way I can't give you my health. You're muted.
That's powerful. That's powerful.
Yeah. But it's like,
sorry. I just wanted to say that
if sickness is contagious, then the health has to be contagious too, right?
Right.
You can't just you don't I don't cure your cancer by me being cancer. Then my healthy germs would spread to yours, and then you'd be healthy. But it doesn't work that way.
I love it. What are your thoughts on the globe versus a flat Earth, if any?
I don't know how to build rocket ships, so technically none of us really have any. We can't really talk about that because all that we can all talk about is what someone else told us. Period. Unless you yourself can go and build a machine that can take you outside of the atmosphere for you yourself to see whether or not we can leave the atmosphere, whether or not the planet is flat, round, whatever, at the end of the day, you're always going to be leaning on someone else's understanding. So based off my research, I don't believe that there's proof that we've left the atmosphere. I don't believe that there is proof that the planet is a globe. But there's also not proof that it's a flat, or like the proof lies in the person who can build a rocket and go up and see. None of us can. So I think it's a polarizing conversation. And
Okay.
it depends, like, what would you do with the answer, basically? And since the answer doesn't affect whether I walk in a straight line or whether gravity affects me, like, at the end of the day, fruit still grows the way it grows. The sun still shines the way it shines. I don't think it really matters that much right now, because all the conversation does is kind of proceed to divide us. And
Beautiful.
yeah.
That's a good place to end on that. Okay, so I've got a few more questions for you. Calisthenics, you mentioned it. How did you get into it? If someone was just starting, where would you recommend they start?
Like I said, I got into it through doing acro yoga, which is the body weight movement, but you're like lifting your friends and stuff. And also through yoga. Calisthenics is a fancy way for saying you're using your own body weight as the resistance for training your muscles. So you're technically not using external objects for their weight. You might use an external object for movement, like a bar that you can pull yourself over, or something you can climb or jump over or crawl under. But the resistance is coming from your own body weight. So I recommend, starting with yoga, join a yoga studio, YouTube. Those are kind of like, difficult. But yeah, just decide. Like, I don't really know what to tell you. Hire a coach, like hire me, join my community tribe. I have videos that I'll, share with you guys. But yeah, basically it's just, we live in an age of information. So just decide, what's your favorite way to learn? Is it in person? Is it a retreat? Is it YouTube? Is it reading? Literally, there's books about it. There's YouTube videos. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then, like you said to us, move your body. So beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so a person who's been on this path for about 3 months said, what are your thoughts on feeling self-righteous, holier than thou, or like a virtue signaling martyr and goody two shoes as a raw vegan? He doesn't resonate with any of that type of thinking, but he's noticed that in his 3 months of transitioning into raw vegan that it comes up. Sometimes people seem to think that they're better or whatever. And so he just is wondering your take on that.
Yeah, I think it, for me, I think it's very disingenuous, for example, when people like to act as if vegans or raw vegans are the only people who can have an elitist or a holier than thou or a supremacist way of being. What I've noticed is that basically the most rudest members of any group also tend to be the loudest. So I don't think being holier than thou is really an inherent part of being vegan or plant-based or anything. Because honestly, most vegans that I know, like, you wouldn't know they're vegan. They don't talk about it. They don't post about it. They just live their lives. But the ones who do post and talk about it are kind of just, and I've been guilty of this sometimes. Sometimes we could be brash, or we can be arrogant or loud, or we can just be very confident. So it's like, it's gonna come across in the main channels. It's gonna come across as, oh, this veganism or raw veganism makes people virtue signal and be better than and holier than thou. And I just don't think that's personally true. I think there's assholes that are a part of every single community. And basically, I think it's okay to be holier than thou too, because the problem is people try to use this whole vegans are rude or raw vegans are holier than thou or elitist as an excuse for them not to be vegan and not to be raw. And it's like, if we're going to use that line of logic, well, how many meat eaters have ever been rude to you? Do you say, well, a meat eater was rude to me, so I'm not going to eat meat anymore? Like, nobody does that. But a vegan was rude to me, but a vegan was rude to me, so I could never be vegan. And it's like, just move on with your life. Like, he's just a rude person. It's not,
Yeah.
he's not rude because he's vegan. It's not like if he removed the vegan label from his self that he would all of a sudden become a nice person. No, he's an asshole. He's going to be an asshole whether he's carnivore, whether he's vegan, whether he's a gymnast, whether he's a doctor. That's just him, you know? So same thing with yourself. If you find yourself being, you know, arrogant, rude, narcissistic, condescending, that's probably just how you are, bro. And now you got a reason. Now you have something to use. Now you have another tool to bang your, you know, narcissism upside other people's heads with. You just have another weapon now to use on people. So just work on yourself in general, because even if you stop being raw, once again, how many people are ex-vegans? And now ex-vegans are the most ruthless, narcissistic, arrogant, you know, and it's not because of veganism or ex-veganism. That's just their personality. They're going to use whatever they're doing to bash people upside the head and say, you're wrong, I'm right. You're bad, I'm better. So,
And it's all
don't get caught
perception and projection way, right? Because somebody might just really be passionate about it. And what we might call arrogance or narcissism is that person's passion. So we had a guest a couple months ago who's on today, and I love this thing. He said, if this is your thing and you're passionate about changing it, go for it. If that's not your calling, leave it be. You know what I mean? Like, leave that person to their cuckoo is what I like to say. Let me just focus on me and what can I do to make the world a better place. So cool. I've got just a couple more questions for you. Do you think it's harder to maintain a fruitarian lifestyle during the winter? What can you do to make it easier? That comes up a lot. People that don't live somewhere where they have access to great quality of fruit. So maybe if you could speak to the two things about being fruitarian in colder climates, and what do you do if you don't have access to great quality fruit?
So do I find it difficult to be fruitarian or raw in the winter?
Yeah, can I this is my question, so I want to
Yeah, go, Vital.
I meant because it's cold, the weather is cold, and in summer it's much easier. You want to eat something that is liquid, and you're thirsty and you want to be lighter. But during the winter, fruits cool you. So it's hard, and you also want to eat something heavier, something warmer. So it's hard to be on light and cold fruit. That's what I'm saying. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, of course. So it all boils down to desire. Like, if you want to be eating fruit and you want to be raw, it won't matter what the temperature is. Also, another point to think about is that you don't live outside. Like, whenever you're eating, even in the winter, I'm sure it's a comfortable temperature in your kitchen, in your dining room, in your home. So it's like you're not really standing outside in the snow trying to eat an apple. You're inside of a home where you can wear clothing, you can have the heat on, you can make a fire. Basically, you can get your warmth from warm tea, making a fire, raising your core body temperature by actually being physically active. And you'd be surprised to notice that when you're actually more hydrated, then you're actually experiencing a more comfortable temperature. So a lot of it is emotional, to be honest. You know, it's just it's the fact that we use food as a comfort thing. And so we might use this hot plate of food as a sort of hot water bottle to make me feel warm. But if you really understand the way the body works, you're actually going to be experiencing more coldness because you're depending on an external heat source to warm you up. So as soon as you remove that heat source, you feel cold. The other thing is that fruit ideally shouldn't be stored in the refrigerator. So it might be cold outside, but if your home is kept at a normal room temperature, then your fruit can also be at a room temperature. And it can actually be, body temperature to eat your fruit. But basically there's things you can do like, using warming spices. You could use ginger or cinnamon, which are not fruits, but you can consume those raw. You can make teas. You could just get up and exercise. You can just wear more clothing. Because once again, you're probably not living like a naked frugivore where you don't ever wear clothes and you don't have a building, so it's being practical and realistic with yourself. Like, no one's saying that, the cold is not a factor at all. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the diet that you want to eat should be a more important factor than looking for a reason to not eat fruit. Because that's really what it comes down to. It's like, if you want to eat fruit, you'll find the solution, basically. The other issue is, you don't have to live where you live. Like, I don't mean to be kind of a hard but about it, but you can live in a warmer place. You can maybe, live somewhere warm during the cold season. So that's the environment thing. And that leads into the quality question. Once again, like, if you had kids, right? If there is not a school in the area where you live, where you feel comfortable sending your kids to school, you move. You go somewhere where there's a school that you want to send your kids to. So if this whole diet is so important to you that you want to eat healthy, you want high quality fruit, maybe you've experienced the benefits of doing it in the summer or whatever, then maybe it's time to consider making the changes to your life where you have access to what you want. I know I'm speaking from a place of privilege. I'm a male, I'm single, I'm young, I can move and I can live wherever I want. But I also would still eat the way that I want to eat if I was forced to be in a colder climate too. I've made it happen, and you can find people who are doing it. Basically, there's the Dutch Festival, there's Orville Douglas, there's people living in colder climates making it happen. There's people that have communities, myself included, where we have people all over the world. So if you want to know where to get good quality fruit in Buckingham, England, then there's someone that'll tell you. And the benefits of being in the global north, I was just talking to someone about this earlier today, but you have access, like in a place like the United States of America, or maybe the major cities in every European country. You can have anything you want from anywhere on the planet at the blink of an eye. So you actually, in many cases, you can get more high quality fruits in those cities than what you might even get in a rural part of a third world country where they're exporting all of their fruits. They're using chemicals and they're mostly growing meats and starches anyways. So the grass is always greener wherever you water it.
Actually, I live in a warm country. I live in the Middle East. But I don't know, during the winter, I'm very cold. Maybe, I don't know, I'm too cold. So I don't know. Maybe it's a problem.
So, okay, I understand. So in terms of getting cold, have you checked your blood and your iron levels? Because I've noticed it's pretty common that like women tend to have this issue with being colder sooner and quicker. But a lot of times it's blood volume and the amount of minerals in your body, because you need the minerals to have certain metabolic processes so you can generate the heat. Also, we talk about sedentary lifestyle. We're meant to use our bodies. So I would definitely encourage, being physically active at least 30 minutes a day. You'll notice a difference. Even myself, last example, I used to wake up very cold in the morning, living in the mountains. There's a river, it's very cold. And I'm like, oh, I just want to stay in bed. I don't want to do Qigong. I wake up and I start doing sweating, and I have to remove all my clothes, even though it's freezing cold outside, because movement and muscles create heat and burn fat, and it will warm up. It will create a higher body temperature. Sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a matter of deficiencies. Yeah. I mean, you're saying that you're from a very young age, you started living right. So, people who started at a later age with all accumulated damages, then it takes time to reverse it. I mean, of course, you're seeing results. It's all relative. But I think the earlier you start, the thing is, you have to learn that. It's sometimes, you don't. If I knew everything I know now, if many years ago, then things would be different. But you only, a lot of many decades pass before you start reversing damage and weaning off of all the addictions. It's a long process, and depends at what point you start. At the earlier you start, of course, the better it is. So yeah, all right. So yeah, it's I know I have deficiencies. I think it's related.
I'll leave you with the two action steps I think you can do. One, you can try to address your deficiency by continuing to eat clean. You could incorporate maybe some wheatgrass or barley grass powder. Basically, try to increase your greens, maybe some green juices to get the minerals back up. Insulate yourself. Like wear some layers. There's no reason to be like, there's nothing to prove to anyone like, oh, I can withstand the temperature. It's like, no, go put on a sweater, put on some socks, put on some leggings, put on another jacket, and bundle up until it's not cold anymore. But something that's not ideal for you for the sake of being warm. You can literally drink hot water and it's not raw. I guess boiling water isn't raw, but like it's warm, and you don't want to kill the nutrients in your food. So that's the main thing. There's also dehydrators. Literally, you can be fully raw or eat fruit and you can dehydrate and warm up some zucchini pasta in a dehydrator. So yeah, continue to be creative and inspired, and don't be discouraged, and just continue to be open-minded that there are solutions.
Yeah, I know. That's why I attend these webinars and all these inspiring. Yeah, you're very inspiring. What you also said about movement, that because we're frugivores, we have to behave like frugivores, and part of that is being active and, I don't know, climbing trees. It's true. And yeah, it's also yeah. So you have no one to ask. It's just us. We just inspire one another because there's no one to ask. We are sort of inventing the wheel. So, well, thank you for all your answers. And also I had another question about water. Like, what is the ideal water, to drink with all the contamination of water today and chemicals and the bottle.
I actually love this question.
Even bottled water, it's also, I don't know, full of dirt, I don't know, bacteria, chemicals.
Thanks for reminding me about hydration. So yeah, when I first began my fruit journey, I was taught about distilled water and how that's the only water that's like pure, that doesn't have any contaminants or any things that will like leave behind in your body. And now, we're learning about H3O2 and structured water and all of this stuff. But basically, yeah, I mean, the planet has been polluted with chemicals and things like that. So I think the streams and the springs are not as ideal as they used to be. Even in the past, you're still getting lots of rocks and sediment in your body when you drink spring water. Mind you, our ancestors knew about distillation, so they also knew to catch rainwater or how to distill things. But yeah, depending on your environment, I would recommend getting your number one hydration source. I would actually say the fresh fruits and vegetables, like really the fresh fruits, like melons, cucumbers is a good one. There's no sugar in a cucumber. It won't digest, like just cucumber juice. Coconut water if you're in the tropics. But I would say where you are, if it's a warm country, you probably have cucumbers or watermelon.
Yeah, it's not pro. I live in
Um,
Israel. There's a lot of,
fruits, vegetables,
yeah, yeah, that's not a problem.
beautiful. So yeah, I basically, if you live wherever you live, basically, I recommend. I probably should start a company or something because I'm not getting paid for this, but you should buy a distiller machine. Buy a machine that can distill the water that comes from your tap or whatever, and use that water for, I don't know, making tea or putting in smoothies or, for washing the foods and stuff. But don't depend on H2O for hydration because you actually need more oxygen and hydrogen than what H2O provides. You need H3O2. Um, and
So how do
yeah,
you get H3O? How do you?
It's the water. It's technically like this fourth phase of water or plasma water that's basically present in living plants. So the water that's in an apple or a tomato or lettuce is not H2O, it's H3O2. It's been organized and structured with carbohydrates, hydrogen, oxygen, to where it actually can assimilate, it can enter the cell through way of diffusion and osmosis. It can get into the cell to actually hydrate and activate the cell. Water is just swishing around in there and leaving behind some rocks, H2O. And it's not really, I mean, personally, the more water I drink, the thirstier I get. And I don't think it's something that you can really notice until you either change the water you're drinking, so switching to distilled water for like a month or so, and then you'll notice, like if I go back to some other water, it's like, oh, this water doesn't hydrate. Or just having fruits so much that you realize you don't get thirsty. That's really the answer. It's just,
Yeah, I eat a lot of.
you shouldn't.
I eat
Yeah,
a
like
lot.
the body's around 70% water, right? And a banana is around 70% water, give or take 67, 72%. Some people are probably around 50% water. They're very dehydrated. But if a banana is around the same percentage of water as the body, then that means if you eat anything less hydrating than a banana, your body has to rehydrate that food in order to make it assimilate to your body. So don't eat anything drier than a banana. If you eat anything drier than a banana, now you have to answer that question: where do I get my water from? Because I'm now using up my hydration reserves to rehydrate this cracker or this bread. Then I'm going to poop out the solid. I'm going to urinate out the liquid, and now I have to rehydrate myself. But if all of you, just try to assure that all of your meals are at least 70% water, then you very likely will not get thirsty at all. And then when you have to consume water, go for distilled water. You can buy it in some places or reverse osmosis. So there's distilled, there's like deionized, reverse osmosis. You kind of got to do your own research to really understand what's happening with water. But bottled water, all of it's trash. Like, to be honest, any water that can sit on a shelf and not go putrid and grow mold, it's dead. Because we know what happens with stagnant water. It smells bad, it grows mold, bacteria, all of that. So yeah, I mean, distilled water.
Like I like to make in the morning drink lemon with water, So just a little bit of water like with lemon. So mostly I'm on
And I'll
fruit.
tell you, in my environment right now, I don't have a distiller machine. They don't sell distilled water here. I can buy the commercial water that they sell called Vilca Agua. So they actually do bottle the water that comes from the springs here, and they just sell it back to us. But they do treat it so it goes through these machines, which destructures it. And then they also add, I believe there's probably a little bit of fluoride or something, because legally they don't want people to get sick. They don't want the water to go bad. So I don't use that water. There's one company here. I will show you. I'm fortunate to live in a country where they actually bottle some volcanic spring water. So this is water from a volcano, and so it's been structured and organized. It's not distilled, it has minerals, but since the minerals come from a volcano, then they don't actually leave behind any deposits in the body. They actually pull out toxins, and it leaves your body much like a clay. I've just noticed that I can drink this water and it will hydrate me. So I do recommend if there's any artisanal spring waters that they sell in Israel, that they sell in a tinted bottle. That's the key. They put it in a tinted bottle so that the structure and the enzymes and the organisms are not killed by UV radiation from sunlight. And so they're at least telling, if they waste money putting color in the plastic, it's because they want to protect their product. So, you might find that it's a pretty decent product if there's some spring artisanal volcanic water that they sell in a tinted bottle, especially, or a glass bottle to protect the enzymes. That might be like your best option aside from distilled water, coconut juices. Yeah, but it's just when in doubt, literally, if I'm thirsty, if I'm out in the town, like let's say I went out with some friends and we went to a bar and I'm not drinking alcohol, but I got thirsty. Like, I'm literally not going to order the water. I'm literally going to be like, do y'all have an apple? I will literally take your GMO pesticide chemical apple, peel it and bite the apple because I need the structured living enzymatic rich water from inside the apple.
Got it.
That's going to hydrate me. That's going to hydrate me more than 3 bottles of their finest artisanal spring water.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your.
Thank you, Vital. Thank you, Jordan, for that. I have 2 questions left for you. The first one being, I've heard you talk just a little bit about herbs and tea, and I just wanted to know your thoughts on that. Some people feel like, just eat the high watery diet with fruits and veggies, and you don't need any herbs. The body will balance itself out. Some people feel like you need herbs, and I was just wondering if you feel like they're hydrating, dehydrating. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And then our last question would be like, whatever it is you want to lead us with, what do you want us to walk away with from our time together today?
Okay. Yeah. So herbs. Yeah, very controversial topic. My main mentor and teacher is opposed to herbs. Orville Douglas, believes that they are, they're stimulants mostly, and they're drugs. And even though I believe you can notice benefits and you can manage symptoms with herbs, I do recognize that people tend to use herbs the same way that they would use pharmaceuticals. So it's not necessarily the herbs that are the problem, I would say, but people be like, what can I take for constipation? What can I take for a headache? What can I do for this? What can I do for weight loss? And you tell them, well, this herb, for example, good example, soursop leaf. They say it's good for cancer. So they're like, okay, so if I got cancer, I should make a tea out of the leaf and drink it, and then my cancer will be cured. But that's not really how it works. It's a holistic thing, and the tea is most likely not addressing the root cause of your cancer. So the problem is, if people aren't focused on addressing the root cause of their problems, then they're going to constantly be caught in this loop of needing a product and needing something outside of themselves to stimulate themselves, to have a bowel movement, stimulate themselves, distract their body, distract the nervous system,
Ooh, powerful.
So it's okay to use herbs, but because like I said, we might want to manage our symptoms. We might be bleeding too much right now, or there's things you could do to lower and raise the blood pressure and change the blood sugar. But your blood sugar isn't out of whack because of a deficiency of not consuming the herb. The body's natural state is homeostasis. So it's removing the cause, which will solve the issue. And that's it. It's like, that's why fruit does work. You have to be patient. You have to be disciplined sometimes, depending on how sick you are and what the context is. And, at the same time, I do believe Orville Douglas has a nuanced perspective, being that he's been practicing health and wellness his entire life. So maybe he doesn't know what it's like to have such a damaged organ that maybe it can't process the detoxification that fruits might excite. And there are herbs that can support certain organs, or herbs that can, cause certain things to happen. So if you're going to use herbs, I recommend don't use herbs unless you're actually going to take an entire course on becoming an herbalist and understanding the spiritual nature, the plant nature, the whole holistic understanding of herbs, because the plants don't want to be abused. And it's also not sustainable for everyone on the whole planet to order some herb that's going to cleanse their colon, and now we're going to go farm it in a monoculture farm and use pesticides to try to grow this herb so we can make money. Sea moss is a good example. It's unsustainable. They're taking this sea moss out of the ocean, which is there to cleanse the ocean. It's there to be the ocean's medicine, not ours. So yeah, don't get caught up in herbs. Don't be right. This is going to lead into my last thought that I want to leave y'all with as well, which is, I think being dogmatic is the number one thing that is the number one mistake. The number one mistake is being too rigid in your perspective of what is right, what's wrong, what's healthy, what's not, what works, what isn't. Rest in peace to, what is it, Dr. Is it Herman Lockhart, Robert Lockhart, I believe?
Robert Lockhart, yeah.
I honestly believe that it was his dogmatic perspective that actually was his demise. Because if he was just open to maybe solving his issue a different way, it's possible he wouldn't have had the organ failure that caused him to get sick and die or whatever. Or different things, be open to understand, there could be a future reality in which I might eat an animal product. This version of me right now doesn't think that I would choose that ever, but it would be unwise to box myself into a box that doesn't allow me to entertain a possible solution if I've exhausted all my other options. So there is a context under which an herb can help you. But in 99% of cases, most people haven't exhausted all their other options to find the root cause before they've just gone to a dependency on an herb. And the other flip side of that is that the people who sell herbs have an incentive to promote herbs because they get paid from you buying them. And, if you're healed, then they can't sell you herbs more anymore. So even herbalists have to think about having a different business model, because if you really want to heal people, then that means you expect to run out of people to sell herbs to one day. Because in a perfect world, you'll become a millionaire. Everyone will buy your herb, get healed. But this doesn't happen because it's a holistic thing. So basically, be your own guru. Be open to entertaining the opposite of what you think is true. At least entertaining. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It doesn't mean you have to go and eat an animal. But at least be open to, what does the research say? What does the anecdotes say for people who took this herb? What is the long-term repercussions? And that's the other thing, is that, I'm 29 years old. There's only so much information. I can only basically parrot information that I've read, researched, people I've talked to. But I only have 29 years worth of experience in my own body. So I definitely recommend learning from people that have been doing the thing that you're trying to learn about for a really long time. So a lot of this wisdom that I gotten my information from are from people like Orville Douglas, Dr. Graham, Dr. Toomey Johnson, Dr. Aris Latham, Karen Calabrese, Annette Larkins. Like, everyone that I'm naming is pretty much been raw at least 10 years and has at least 20 years worth of clinical experience with what actually happens when you feed people this way, when you give them this herb, when you put them in this environment. And at the same time, everyone that I just mentioned, they all have different ideas of what is the best way to do it and what is the right way. And I personally feel like they are all thriving at what they are doing. But for example, Karen Calabrese, thriving raw vegan woman. But I believe she's at the point where she doesn't promote fruit. She actually believes people are eating too much fruit. And, you got Orville Douglas. He's like, only eat fruit. You know, eat too much greens, you'll mess up your thyroid, your hypothyroid, your hypothalamus. You got Dr. Aris, who is big on juicing. And he makes gourmet food for a living. But Orville Douglas doesn't believe in juicing at all. And yet all these people are healthy, thriving, strong, smart. So take the information and do what you will with it, but don't get caught in analysis paralysis. Don't get caught in bombarding yourself with so many ideas from all these different people. Learn what you need to learn, but go out and apply something. Go out and, be disciplined and consistent enough to, do a fruit diet, for 6 months, a year, 3 years, try a couple of weeks of high fats, try some fasting. So I think that's why this group you guys have is actually super dope, because there's not really a rigid way you have to be, but I think you guys are all coming together around the benefits of fasting or not eating or eating less.
Yes, would be 100%
Which everyone can benefit from in some context. So where we get into trouble is where we say, this is the way you must be, this is the way you have to do it. Yeah, I don't agree. There's different frugivores, like we're frugivores, but so are fruit bats, and so are certain primates, and so are certain birds. But we all have a different way in which we actually play that out. We have our personality. The Most High creation has gifted us so much variety and so much personality in the way that we are. Like no two oranges taste the same, and so it's beautiful. Just continue to be open-minded.
We all need to find our own way. We all need to find our own way and allow our body to be our guide. So thank you so much, Jordan. You gave us so much. This was so rich. I love that you invited us back to ourselves, and you invited us back to action, and you invited us about to practice long enough so that we can tell what the results are. Because like you said, whether it's you or anyone else, everybody's we're going to have what our experience told us, what our experience taught us. But the best experience is our own experience, and look to somebody that maybe is living a lifestyle with what you want to experience as perhaps a light, if you will, on your path. So thank you for being with us. I will post all of Jordan's information. He has a website. He has his own raw cookbook, and that's a weird thing to say, raw cookbook. But he has a book about living foods with recipes. That's how I'd like to say it. He has a Telegram group, which I'm a part of, and there are many different aspects of that. You've been an absolute delight and so knowledgeable. We really, really, really appreciate you. And yeah, thank you. We hope you'll come back and visit us again sometime. And Arik, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jordan. It was a pleasure to see you, to listen to you. And yeah, and again, we'll put all the contact details of Jordan below the video. Yeah, so, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who came, who asked questions. Your questions were very profound. Your presence was very helpful. So thank you, everyone. And good day, good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.